Welcome back to the Toffee Blues, your source for all things Everton. I'm Ollie Hayes, and today I'm bringing the player ratings for Chelsea 1, Everton nil. A disappointing loss in West London on Saturday afternoon. Let's get straight into the player ratings, and we'll start in goal with Jordan Pickford, and he gets an 8 for me. I thought he played well in the big moments, once again saving us at big times in a game. Was probably one of the key reasons that we were in the game for so long, making a very good save from the likes of Noni Madueke, from Nicholas Jackson, denying some decent forward players there. So, maybe people will raise eyebrows about the 8 because of Pickford's involvement in Chelsea's goal, but I think we'll get onto that later in the video, but I do think Beto does have to do better with that one. But no, I think Pickford gets an 8 for me. I thought he played very well in big moments once again, and he's showing why week in, week out that he is England's number one. But moving away from the goalkeeper now, going into the back four, we'll start with Nathan Patterson at right back. I'm going to give him a 5. I think he looked very shaky. I think we have to just mention that awful back pass to Nicholas Jackson just before we mention anything else. Nearly gifting Chelsea a goal. He looked very, very shaky at times, Nathan Patterson. And, in an opportunity where he's got a chance to show what he's made of to David Moyes, in this game, he didn't really grab that opportunity by the scruff of the neck. He looked really shaky. He looked really nervous at times. So obviously he's probably going to have a little bit more of a consistent spell between now and the end of the season. In these last 4 games, he's going to get another chance at right back. But, for the first one, in this little spell that he's going to get, I did think he looked very, very shaky. So it's a 5 for Nathan Patterson, in my opinion. Moving into the two centre halves, and obviously we saw a new partnership be formed between Jared Branthwaite and Jake O'Brien, the first time we've seen them together. We'll start with Jared Branthwaite, and he gets an 8 from me. I can't really match him. I can't really separate him and Jordan Pickford for my man of the match, so I think I'll give them a joint one. But I thought it was a fantastic performance at centre half from Jared Branthwaite. He stepped up to really guide Jake O'Brien through the entire game, obviously in the absence of James Tarkowski, but the amount of interceptions, blocks, tackles, headers, everything that Jared Branthwaite was doing was just completely exemplary, and I'm seeing week in, week out why he's such a top centre half, and why he's probably going to be very sought after in the summer. But as I said before, Jared Branthwaite gets an 8 from me, and then his centre back partner Jake O'Brien, he gets a 7. A little bit more of a difficult afternoon, obviously trying to bed into centre half for his first appearance at centre half for Everton in an Everton shirt. Obviously, he's been playing at right back under David Moyes since the turn of the year, but I thought he looked really assured next to Jared Branthwaite. I think that's a partnership I'd like to see a lot more. As I said before, I think Jared Branthwaite did guide Jake O'Brien through the game, obviously in the absence of James Tarkowski, but Jake O'Brien was putting in decent tackles. He was being smart in the way he pressed the Chelsea attackers. So it's a 7 for me, and I think long may it continue. That's probably a partnership. If Jared Branthwaite does stay beyond the summer, that's probably a partnership that we're going to be seeing a lot more next season under David Moyes. But as I said before, two really decent performances at centre half. So Branthwaite gets an 8 and Jake O'Brien gets a 7 for me. Moving to left back to Vitaly Mykolenko, he gets a 6. A little bit more of a difficult afternoon for him. He did well considering tough circumstances. Chelsea have got some very tricky wingers. They've got some, a lot of speed out there. You look at Noni Madueke and then the likes of Jadon Sancho coming on, for example. They have a lot of speed out on those wings. So Mykolenko did well, considering the circumstances. I thought obviously he had probably a better game against Manchester City, but I think Mykolenko's getting to a level now of consistency where he's putting in decent defensive performances week in, week out. Against Manchester City, we saw a little bit more going forward. And again, I think he replicated a little bit more going forward against Chelsea. But can we see a little bit more from him creating chances going forward? But Mykolenko, solid, decent performance, showing a little bit of consistency now in the team. So he gets a 6 from me. Moving into midfield, start with James Garner. He gets a 5 from me. Maybe a little bit harsh, but I just didn't feel like he got involved at all. We want James Garner to take games by the scruff of the neck and start putting in defence splitting passes and showing a little bit more technical ability. I think he breaks up the play well. He does the simple things quite well. Where Abdoulaye Doucouré lacks the ability to do simple passes, for example, I think James Garner makes up for that. He just does the simple things well. But as I said before, I didn't really think he got too involved in the Chelsea game. So it's a 5 from me. Then moving to his centre midfield partner, Idrissa Gana Gueye, a little bit of a trickier afternoon for him as well. I'm going to give him a 6. I think he still broke up the play very well. Dealt with Chelsea's decent midfield very well. He's just showing week in, week out that he is a Rolls Royce of a centre midfielder. I'm praying that he does sign that contract extension because we know how his experience in the midfield can guide others. And I think he's shown week in, week out that he can do that and go toe to toe with the best midfielders in the league. But as I said before, a little bit more of a trickier afternoon for him, maybe showing towards the back end of the season now and getting a little bit leggy. Obviously, he is in his mid 30s now, but he gets a six from me against Chelsea because it was a pretty standard, decent performance from him. And he's showing the level of consistency that we're used to seeing from him. But moving a little bit further forward to Abdoulaye Doucouré, I'm going to give him a five as well next to James Garner. He created next to nothing going forward in that first half. Missed a pretty big chance at the end of the first half where a header went way, way wide. He's so loose on the ball, isn't he? Whenever he gets the ball into his feet, you do wonder where the ball is actually going to go because I don't even think he knows himself that his ability to do 5 yard passes is getting more and more thin week in, week out. But as I said before, he didn't create a lot in that first half. And then in the second half, I think he got marginally better, but for his standards in terms of getting on the score sheet, and he has liked to do that a lot against Chelsea in recent seasons. I'm probably going to stick with a five for Abdoulaye Doucouré in this one. But moving into the front three now, going to Iliman Ndiaye, and this might surprise a few people. People might be saying I'm being a little bit harsh, but I think Iliman Ndiaye's high standards probably warranted a bit of a better performance on Saturday, but I'm going to give Iliman Ndiaye a five. He didn't really create anything of note in that first half, struggled to get into the game. I think he is still just lacking a little bit of that match sharpness that we saw towards the start of this season when he was playing so well in an Everton shirt. And obviously, people might say that a five is very harsh, but I think just because he's got such high standards and he is such a top player, I think for his performance on Saturday, obviously getting taken off at half time, I think a five is probably just about right for Iliman Ndiaye. And obviously, as I said before, getting taken off at half time for Carlos Alcaraz, who I'll get onto later in the video, that substitution kind of changed things for the second half. So we'll get onto that later on when I talk about the substitutions. Moving to the right hand side now, we'll talk about Jack Harrison. I'm going to give him a five as well. I thought he was marginally better than Iliman Ndiaye. Did well to set up the Beto chance in the second half, but he was obviously taken off straight after that in the triple substitution. Listen, Jack Harrison, we know what he is in terms of chance creation, and that's next to nothing. It's very lackluster. I think he did okay on Saturday. Just he was probably marginally better than he has been in recent weeks, but as I said before, he just doesn't really create anything going forward, does he? And has a pretty torrid time in doing so in terms of chance creation. So it is a five for Jack Harrison. And I think, beyond the summer, are we going to sign him? I'm not too sure. I don't think we are. I think obviously these next four games will probably be his last four games in Everton shirt, and we might look for other targets in the summer. But yeah, Jack Harrison gets a five from me. Not his greatest of afternoons, certainly in terms of chance creation, probably wasn't of his best. But moving to the striker now, obviously Beto started up front in the absence of Armando Broja, who was playing against his parent club. Beto gets a six from me. Unlucky not to see his shot hit the back of the net in the second half. And then obviously, like Jack Harrison, he was taken off straight after that. I think, if you're looking at everyone's attacking performance in that first half, I think you could give everyone a two or a three because they created absolutely next to nothing. Obviously, Beto's probably at fault for the goal, but I think he made up for it at the start of the second half by the amount of chances he was creating. Maybe people will say I'm being a little bit too generous on Beto. Those that have watched the channel for a long time know my opinions on Beto, but I do think Beto was probably unlucky not to score, and that's why I've just bumped him up to a six over Jack Harrison and Iliman Ndiaye. But moving away from the starting 11 now, we'll go on to the subs. On the 45th minute, obviously Carlos Alcaraz came on for Iliman Ndiaye at half time. I'm going to give Alcaraz a 7. I think he arguably changed the game, in my opinion. He changed the game for us. He just upped the intensity levels, which was something we didn't see in the first half. It was much needed energy. It gave Chelsea something else to think about, which was, I think, positive. It was a good substitution from David Moyes. A few chances here and there for Carlos Alcaraz, but I think the energy levels went up, which was it gave us a fighting chance in that second half, and it definitely upped the performance level. So, yeah, Carlos Alcaraz gets a 7 from me. And then we'll move to the triple substitution on the 64th minute. We'll start with Ashley Young, who came on for Nathan Patterson. I'm going to give Ashley Young a 6. I think he looked a lot more assured than Nathan Patterson. He showed his experience, which is something, that is vital at this level. Obviously, Ashley Young getting towards 40 this year, so he's got experience in abundance, but I thought he looked pretty assured, played okay, obviously got skinned a couple of times by the likes of Noni Madueke and Jadon Sancho, but who doesn't in this day and age? Jadon Sancho is a very, very tricky winger, so I think Young, considering the circumstances, did quite well coming on, and that's why I've given him a 6. Moving to Yusuf Chamiti, I'm going to give him a 7. I think he was arguably our brightest spark going forward of the afternoon against Chelsea. Some intelligent runs in behind, obviously in an Everton team where you're not getting a lot of chances, I think a young striker like Yusuf Chamiti isn't going to look the best. But I think if you're watching him just on his individual performance, I think he was really smart at times in the runs that he was making, dragging a few Chelsea defenders away to create chances for others. I think it was a really smart performance when he came on, and I wouldn't be against seeing him have a run in the team between now and the end of the season. Obviously, we saw it towards the back end of last season where I think Dominic Calvert-Lewin was injured after Merseyside derby. So I think it was Yusuf Chamiti that started against Brentford. I think it was around this time last year. So again, I'd be happy to see that again. He's had a season that's been riddled by injury, so why not give him a shot in these last four games? See what the situation is with him, and then make a decision about his future in the summer. But I thought it was a relatively decent performance by Yusuf Chamiti coming on cold and creating a few intelligent runs and a few intelligent chances. So he's probably our brightest spark. I'm going to give him a 7. And then moving to the last substitution of the triple 64th minute substitution, it was Dwight McNeil. He came on for Jack Harrison, and I'm going to give Dwight McNeil a 6. Obviously, he was unlucky not to score with that volley that saw saved by Robert Sanchez in the box. He did offer us a little bit of a different dynamic. He offered Chelsea something else to think about. Obviously, we know that the type of player Dwight McNeil is. He's very technical. He's good at chance creation. I'd hope to see a little bit more from corners from Dwight McNeil. Maybe we can see that towards the start of next season when he gets back up to full fitness. But obviously, very unlucky not to score. Obviously, if that goal goes in, I'm bumping him up to an 8 or a 9 because that's how reactionary I am. But yeah, Dwight McNeil, I'm going to give him a 6. But for a fantastic save, it probably would have been more. But as I said before, offered us a little bit of a different dynamic going forward. But that wraps up the player ratings for today. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Have I been too generous on some? I'm expecting maybe some people to think I've been too generous on Beto. Have I been too negative and too sort of harsh on the likes of Ilman and Jai and players like that? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. But that is all from me today. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. I'll speak to you soon.